There is a very specific, almost universal feeling that I suspect, and honestly, pretty much everyone listening has experienced recently.
Oh, I have a feeling I know exactly what time of day you're talking about.
Right. It usually hits right around like 8:00 p.m. You're just sitting on the couch and you feel completely, totally drained.
Yeah, just bone tired.
Exactly. But the catch is, you haven't actually done any heavy physical labor today.
Hmm.
I mean, you didn't run a marathon, you didn't chop wood, you weren't standing on a factory assembly line,
Right, there's no physical reason for it.
none at all. Yet, your bones feel heavy and your brain just feels like it's, I don't know, wrapped in lead.
That profound exhaustion completely defies the traditional physics of work, honestly.
Eh,
Because, a century ago, if someone collapsed on the couch at night, the relationship between the energy they expended and the fatigue they felt was, well, perfectly linear.
Because they were physically moving objects in space all day.
Exactly. But today, that linear relationship is completely broken. It leaves us with this fatigue that feels totally disconnected from our actual physical output.
Which makes looking back at your day incredibly frustrating. Because, like, what did you actually do? You woke up and checked 3 different delivery apps to see if a package was delayed.
Oh, constantly checking the tracker.
Yeah. And then at lunch, you didn't just write an email, you asked an AI assistant to draft it. And then you had to read through like 3 slightly different AI-generated variations just to decide which one sounded the most like you.
Right, which takes more mental energy than just writing it sometimes.
Seriously. Then you get home, and your smart TV forces you to navigate a new user agreement and adjust software settings just to watch a 30-minute comedy show.
The exhaustion isn't from working too hard in the traditional sense.
No, not at all. It's coming from this relentless, invisible stream of micro decisions.
And that stream never truly stops, right? It simply changes shape throughout the day. It morphs from professional workflow choices to consumer purchasing decisions to digital maintenance. It's just constantly asking for your input.
And that relentless shape-shifting is really the core focus of our deep dive today.
Right.
We are looking at this fascinating article that explores why this specific brand of modern fatigue is happening.
Yeah, it introduces a really brilliant concept that the author calls the life membrane.
Right, the life membrane. And just for the listeners, while we will use our standard analytical toolkit in the background, so, models like the membrane contact phase, or layered membrane observation system, or LMOS, and general organizational architecture.
Just to help us map the tensions, yeah.
Exactly. But the primary mission today is really unpacking the article's core insights. We want to understand what this interface means for your daily energy levels and, well, that inevitable 8:00 p.m. crash.
Yeah, those analytical frameworks are really just our auxiliary lines today. We're using them merely to detect the hidden structural gradients in the author's argument. The spotlight is entirely on your everyday experience and how you interact with the modern world.
Okay, so the article starts by pointing out this massive trap that we basically all fall into when we feel this weird, disconnected fatigue. It calls it the trap of personal weakness.
Oh, this is so common.
Right. When we feel drained after a day of just sitting at a desk looking at screens, we immediately look inward. The internal monologue is always self-deprecating.
It's like, what's wrong with me?
Yes, we say, my concentration is really slipping lately, or I must be getting older, or I'm just terrible at managing my time, I need more discipline.
It is dangerously easy to just close the book on the problem by deciding that we are personally flawed.
But wait, let's unpack this for a second. Why is our default always self-blame? Why do we do that?
Well, blaming oneself is what we'd call a naturally closed explanation. It is easily digestible, and, ironically, it provides a sort of false sense of comfort.
Wait, comfort. How is feeling bad about yourself comforting?
Because if the problem is just that you need more coffee, or you need to sleep better, or you just lack discipline, then the narrative has a neat, tidy ending. It puts the illusion of control back in your hands.
Oh, I see. If it's my fault, I can fix it.
Exactly. The alternative, admitting that you are perfectly capable, but you're operating within an environment designed to drain you, is much more unsettling. But our LMOS framework, specifically the principle of prioritizing observation over impression, demands that we look deeper.
Right, so the impression is, I am tired because I am weak.
But the observation, if you look at the actual structure of the situation across the general population, reveals a completely different reality.
Because if you look around, everyone is quietly experiencing this exact same fatigue simultaneously.
Your friends, your coworkers, your family.
Yeah. And if an entire society is suddenly reporting the exact same cognitive exhaustion, it fundamentally cannot be an epidemic of individual weakness.
Exactly. There is a structural phenomenon happening right at the contact point between us and the modern world.
Which brings us directly to the star of the show today, the life membrane. If this exhaustion isn't personal weakness, the author posits that it has to do with this specific interface.
Yes. And the text is incredibly careful to outline what this membrane is not, because when we hear terms like life or lifestyle, our minds immediately default to economics.
Right, we think about standard of living or, housing size, income brackets, whether you can afford premium groceries.
But the life membrane is not a measure of your wealth, your income, or your material comfort.
So what is it then? The text defines it as a judgment-grounding surface, which sounds very academic.
It does, but it's actually very practical. It is the literal functional interface that takes a massive, abstract, rapidly changing world and translates it into the everyday choices you actually have to process and act upon.
It's the translation layer.
Exactly. Every piece of technological progress or economic shift has to pass through this surface to become a part of your daily routine.
Okay, let me try to visualize this for the listener, because when I was reading this, I kept thinking of a vacuum cleaner.
Oh, I like where this is going.
So think of the physical filter on a vacuum cleaner. The motor of the vacuum, which represents our brain, might be in perfect working condition. It's strong, it's capable, it's well rested.
Right, the hardware is fine.
Yeah. But if the environment you are vacuuming is suddenly pumped full of a completely new kind of microscopic invisible dust, that filter is going to get clogged incredibly fast.
The fine particulate just coats the whole thing.
Exactly. And the motor starts whining, the whole machine struggles to breathe, and it feels like it's breaking down. But the machine isn't broken. The filter is simply overloaded by a new environmental particulate.
That is a perfect analogy. The life membrane is an observational coordinate, much like that filter. Giving this interface a name allows us to step back and map our experience.
So instead of concluding that the motor is broken and just blaming ourselves, we can suddenly see the clogged filter.
We can identify the cognitive dust, exactly.
Well, let's talk about the nature of that dust, because this is where the translation happens. How do massive, abstract global events actually reach you, the listener?
That's the core question.
Because most of us don't interact directly with the bleeding-edge development of high-speed artificial intelligence in some corporate lab. We aren't personally managing global logistics networks or drafting international financial policies.
No, we're just going to work, raising our kids, paying bills.
Right. So the disconnect here is fascinating. How do giant macro events cause such intense personal fatigue?
Well, it's because those macro changes never arrive on your doorstep as big, abstract news headlines that you can just passively read and ignore.
They don't.
No, they have to be translated to monetize your attention or to integrate into your workflow. They are translated through your life membrane into tiny mandatory choices.
Mandatory choices like what?
Well, you don't interact with global AI development. You interact with a new prompt screen on your daily work software that forces you to choose between 5 different automated workflows before you can even start a basic task.
Oh man, yes. Every single day.
And you don't interact with global supply chain fluctuations. You interact with a grocery app demanding you confirm delivery windows, substitute out-of-stock items, and navigate dynamic pricing based on algorithmic demand.
It's basically death by 1,000 cuts. The big world is constantly poking us with these tiny little interrogations.
How do you want to route this task now?
What privacy setting do you consent to?
Which subscription tier do you require for this new feature?
It's exhausting just talking about it.
It is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, using the LMOS concept of speed and shear, the mechanical cause of the fatigue becomes really clear.
Speed and shear. Okay, explain that.
Think of tectonic plates. The world's operating systems, so technology, global markets, algorithm updates, they are moving at an absolutely blinding speed. They can deploy a global update overnight.
Right.
But human daily life, our biological and social routines, has a natural, much slower rhythm. We still require 8 hours of sleep. We still need time to eat, to transition between tasks, to process our emotions.
So when you have one structural layer moving at Mach 3 and the biological layer right beneath it is just moving at a walking pace, that difference in speed creates shear.
It creates literal friction.
And according to the membrane contact phase model, the MCP, it is this constant daily friction rubbing against your life membrane that actually causes the physical and mental wear and tear.
Yes. That is the exhaustion you feel at 8:00 p.m. It's the heat generated by the friction of two fundamentally different speeds of existence just grinding against each other.
Man, that makes so much sense. But here's where it gets really interesting because there is a massive paradox sitting right in the middle of all this friction.
The convenience paradox.
Right, because all of these systems, the apps, the AI assistants, the dynamic delivery networks, were explicitly designed to make our lives easier.
They are aggressively marketed to us as tools of liberation.
Exactly. So shouldn't all these abundant resources, all this help, reduce our cognitive load? If the AI is writing the email and the app is delivering the groceries, why is the fatigue actually getting worse the more help we get?
The text offers a very sharp diagnosis here. Greater convenience naturally breeds more options, and more options inevitably lead to endless comparisons.
Okay, give me an example.
Consider buying something simple, like a toaster. 20 years ago, you went to a local store, looked at maybe 3 toasters on a shelf, picked the one in your price range, and bought it. The judgment was finalized in 5 minutes.
Right, you didn't even think twice about it.
But today, you go online, and you are presented with 10,000 toasters.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And they're cross-referenced with thousands of user reviews, algorithmic recommendations, affiliate marketing blogs, dynamic price drops.
And suddenly you've spent 3 hours researching a box that burns bread.
Exactly. The scale of the decision expands to fill the convenience of the tool, and when the technology is supposed to do the thinking for us, it really doesn't.
Right, the text points out something brilliant about AI in the workplace. Even when it helps us, the final responsibility of judgment is always kicked back to the human.
Always. The AI hands you 3 summaries and says, you decide which is most accurate.
So you haven't actually escaped the burden of judgment. You've just shifted it from the mechanical act of writing to the much higher order cognitive act of evaluating and verifying.
And that shift from execution to constant evaluation is what's so exhausting. If we look at the biological and psychological mechanism behind this, using the membrane contact phase framework, we run into the concept of chronic depolarization.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of depolarization. It's like a nerve cell, right?
Exactly. A nerve cell receives a stimulus, it fires, which is the depolarization, and then it requires a refractory period.
It has to rest, reset, and repolarize before it can physically fire again.
Right. But the modern digital environment fundamentally ignores that biological requirement for a refractory period.
Because the notifications just never stop.
The stimuli, the micro choices, the endless updates, they literally never stop. So your life membrane loses its repolarization capacity, it loses its ability to rest, reset, and recover.
It is forced to stay in a constant high-tension state of alert.
It's like a muscle that is permanently flexed. If you hold a weight at arm's length for long enough, the muscle starts to shake, it burns, and eventually it just gives out entirely.
Wow. The motor isn't broken, but the continuous tension depletes all the cellular energy.
Exactly. True wealth, or a truly healthy membrane, isn't defined by having infinite resources or options. It is defined by having a margin.
A margin.
Yeah, the cognitive surplus to postpone decisions, to ignore trivial things, to just let safe habits run on autopilot.
But the modern wealth of options paradoxically steals that margin. You are forced to constantly expend high-level cognitive energy deciding what not to decide.
Because actively filtering out the noise is itself a taxing glucose-burning judgment.
Okay, I have to ask a really grounded, practical question here. I'm genuinely struggling with this.
Go ahead.
If the shear is caused by the speed of the global internet, and I have to live in this world like my job requires me to be on these platforms, my kids' schools communicate through these apps, aren't my filters just permanently clogged?
That's a very fair concern.
Because this feels like a very sophisticated academic way of telling me it's society's fault, you're structurally doomed to be exhausted unless you move off the grid into the woods.
I'm really glad you brought that up because this raises an important question. Naming the life membrane and understanding the mechanics of this friction is absolutely not about adopting a defeatist attitude.
Okay, so what is it about?
It is about recovering a useful point of observation so you can reclaim your agency. When you name the life membrane, you immediately stop that premature, damaging narrative of, I am weak, I am failing.
Right, you clear away the self-blame.
Which is entirely useless and burns its own kind of emotional energy, by the way. By stopping that, you regain the ability to look objectively at how you are interacting with the world.
So it's the difference between blindly kicking the vacuum cleaner because it won't work and actually opening it up to examine the filter.
Exactly. The act of examining it gives you something practical to manage. We refer to this in the LMOS framework as cognitive cooling.
Cognitive cooling. It's like that.
Yeah, when we blame ourselves, our cognition heats up with anxiety, frustration, and panic. By shifting the observation to the membrane, the temperature drops.
We aren't trying to close the book with a rigid, definitive answer like, society is completely broken, or
Yeah.
I am fundamentally broken.
Right, we are keeping our perception fluid. Consciously observing the tension on your own membrane without panicking allows you to become an active manager of your own interface.
So the goal isn't to stop the tectonic plates from moving. The goal is to build better shock absorbers. We can actively design the friction out of our days.
Exactly. You start looking for the specific points of contact where the shear is highest. You ask yourself where you are expending high-order judgment on low-value outcomes.
Man, that is so empowering. Let's bring this all together for the listener.
Sure.
What we've discovered today through this text is that the massive sweeping changes of the world, the things you read about in the news regarding technology, AI, global economics, they don't just stay in the news,
No, they reach you.
but they reach you in disguise. They disguise themselves as countless, almost invisible, everyday decisions that demand your continuous judgment.
They are translated into friction. And that friction prevents your cognitive nerves from ever repolarizing.
So the exhaustion you feel at the end of the day is deeply, profoundly real. It is a biological response to an environmental anomaly. It is not a moral failing.
It's not a lack of discipline.
It is literally the sound of a high-speed, hyper-complex world rubbing against your life membrane. It's the shear between the speed of the internet and the natural rhythm of your humanity.
The core takeaway here is really one of empowerment through observation.
Right.
By consciously observing this interface, by recognizing your life membrane as a real, tangible boundary that requires care, maintenance, and margin, you can stop the cycle of self-blame. You can reveal the hidden patterns of modern friction that society usually demands we just accept as normal.
Absolutely. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought. Something for you to actively explore today as you go about your routines.
A little homework.
Exactly. Think about the physical device that is probably closest to you right now, your phone. Look at the apps on your home screen, or think about the digital routines you are forced to follow at work.
Just observe them.
Right. And I want you to ask yourself, which of those tools are genuinely serving you, giving you margin, and acting as a healthy, functional part of your membrane? And which ones are actually just poorly designed interfaces that are forcing you to absorb the friction of a fast-moving world?
Identifying the difference between a tool that creates margin and a tool that extracts judgment is the very first step in cognitive cooling.
Are you acting as the shock absorber for a broken digital system? What is one single micro decision, one tiny source of digital or administrative friction that you could completely design out of your life tomorrow?
Just one is enough to start.
Maybe it's setting up an auto subscription for a basic household item so you never have to compare prices again. Maybe it's physically charging your phone in another room to force a daily repolarization period.
Or maybe adopting a good enough rule for small purchases instead of spending 2 hours reading reviews.
Yes. If you can identify just one piece of that invisible digital dust and remove it, you give your life membrane a chance to breathe, to repair, and to heal. And maybe that 8:00 p.m. exhaustion won't feel quite so heavy tomorrow.